Today is the day to have your voice heard because it is primary election day.
Yeah, in fact, there are more than 120 legislative races on the ballot and one statewide for U.S. Senate. And remember, your ballot has to be postmarked by today or taken to a ballot drop box by 8 tonight. Check your county's website to see where the closest drop box is. And be sure to sign that ballot envelope. Don't forget that. This year's ballots already come with paid postage. All right, so to talk a little bit more about today's election, Secretary of State Kim Wyman joining our Brandy Cruz live in studio. Hi.
Good morning. The woman in charge of elections. You have a busy day, but we appreciate you stopping by to make sure that we can talk about some of these things. I want to talk about voter turnout first. 22% right now.
Right now.
Is it going to get better?
It's going to get better.
How much
better?
better?
Probably double. Probably double. Sounds counterintuitive, but typically people wait till this weekend, this last weekend to vote. And in fact, I have my ballot in the car and going to drop it off on my way into work. So
you're gonna drop, and you have until 8 p.m.
I do. I've got tons of time left.
What do we usually see in a primary election?
Well, the most comparable election to this one is the 2010 primary because we had a U.S. Senate race and it was midterm. And we saw about 40% in that one. So I'm anticipating similar numbers this time around. It's going to depend on how much people think a race is really hot. Spokane County, for example, is already close to 30% in their return. So I think you're going to see some parts of the state with really high turnout.
And I mean, for primary election, we have some exciting things on the ballot. One of the most consequential races in the country right now is happening in the 8th Congressional District, the race to replace Rep. Reichert, who's retiring. Does something like that really up the numbers that much?
Typically it will. Typically it will if people see it as a tight race. You know, in that race we have 3 Democrats and 1 Republican. So the question is, in that red district, are you going to see Democrats really turning out in higher numbers?
They have never won that seat before, so I think that's also what's fascinating about it. And I think it was created in '83, that seat. Never has a Democrat won it, so all eyes on that. Election security. This is interesting, and I don't want to overblow it and have people worried that the Russians are going to meddle with their vote, because we know that hasn't happened. That didn't happen in 2016. They attempted to breach our system. They weren't able to do it. But for the first year ever, you have called in the Washington National Guard to help secure our vote. I actually got to, if you look here, I got to go meet them. The cybersecurity guys who are doing this down at Camp Murray. Really fascinating. Smart men and women felt real stupid in that room. Why is the National Guard required if we're not worried about it?
Well, we're always concerned about cybersecurity, so that has always been a high priority. I think it's just now in the media spotlight a little bit brighter. National Guard has been our partner for many years. They've helped us do things like continuity of operations planning for our counties and the state in case we have an earthquake or a fire or a flood on election day. They have generators, they have tents, they have resources that we can tap into that'll help keep that smooth election day. But as you said, we have a crack cybersecurity team here in Washington State because many of these Guard members work at Amazon or Microsoft or Google, and they have this great expertise that they bring to their Guard positions. So we're tapping into that to just have one more partner in this process.
So the Department of Homeland Security now considers our election systems to be critical infrastructure. What does that mean, and who's paying for all of this? Who's paying for all this election security?
Well, the critical infrastructure designation puts us on the same level as the power grid, as water systems. So it's a really important thing. It's a little challenging because we don't want the federal government taking over our local elections, but it gives us resources that we wouldn't have otherwise. We have things like information sharing centers where we're live time giving information and getting information about what's happening in our states and know, for example, an IP address that might be doing some things that are nefarious and we can block them on our site, to doing testing on our system to see if we have any vulnerabilities that we need to shore up. So we are far better off than we were 2 years ago in terms of resources, and we got about $8 million from Congress to help in those efforts for the 2018 and 2020 elections.
So for just the regular citizen out there who's like, I want to know that 1, my vote is secure, and 2, my voter information is secure, what do you say to them?
We work every day to make sure that happens. So your vote are on tabulation systems that are not connected to the internet. They're air-gapped. They're way for someone from the outside to get to those systems, and that's true nationwide. So the vote tallying systems are very secure, and our voter registration systems are also secure. They are connected to the internet, so we have a lot of layers of physical and electronic security to make sure your data is protected and that people aren't getting in and messing with it.
So, of course, after the primary is done, the midterm elections come. This is going to be one of the most consequential midterms we've had in a while. You're talking about balance of power issues. We have some really important races happening in our state. If you had to guess what you think the voter turnout is going to be, I want you to give me a percentage so I could come back in November and see how close you were.
Now, you know I don't do that anymore. You know, I think in the fall elections, if we look at historical trends again, I'd say probably we'll be in the 60 to 70% range in terms of turnout. We're anticipating we'll be in the mid-40s, and I'm not supposed to do, you know, projections, but if you look at kind of historical trends, low 40 percentile. So, you know, we're going to see if the prepaid postage has an effect on turnout.
Well, that's what I was going to wonder. You know, is it actually good? There are a lot of people who criticize that, to think that somebody's not actually going to decide, do I vote or not vote, based on a little stamp. But I will say it is more convenient. It's hard to find a stamp these days.
That's what I keep hearing, yes.
Okay.
So we're going to see. I mean, we're going to have actual data we can make some decisions about, and we're going to see, does it actually increase turnout or does it just change behavior? What we're seeing in the early returns is it's changing behavior. People are not putting it in the drop box or putting it in a mailbox.
Yeah, I know you fought really hard with the governor to make sure every county had prepaid postage, because there was the issue of King County was going to pass it. Hyper blue in King County, so it kind of put other counties at a disadvantage. I had the list of all the voter turnout for all your counties, and I was going to go through and shame some counties that are really low, but since you told me to wait until after the first ballots are dropped, I guess I'll wait and then I'll come back and try to shame some counties that are low. By the way, when should we have a good idea? When's that first drop happening?
First drop of
votes.
Oh,
have the first indication.
Probably about 8:05, 8:10 in most counties they should be posting.
All right, Secretary of State Kim Wong. Appreciate your time this morning. Any last pitch to people who haven't turned the ballot in, including yourself?
Just make sure if you're going to put it in a mailbox that the pickup has an